The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.
Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, greetings. Welcome to another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. This is program number 845, coming to you on Monday the 14th of November 2016. On this program, I will speak to you on the topic, no such thing as a free divorce. But before getting into that topic, a few preliminary comments, beginning as usual with condolences to all those families which have suffered the recent bereavements, and in particular the families of those two young children, the two boys, who were lost in the heavy rains that caused flooding last week, Wednesday. And then today we are hearing of at least 3 homicides having been committed in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, including, according to the rumor, a mother and a son. My deepest condolences to all the families involved in these tragedies. And let me send special condolences as well to my good friend and brother, Raul John, otherwise known as Copy of Barley, whose father passed away last night. His father, Leslie John, well-known man from Barley, and my condolences go out to all his children, especially my dearly beloved brother, Copy, and his wife, Prunella, and their children. My deepest sympathies. And we are happy to learn that Sister Nan is out of the hospital and is home recuperating. Thank God for that, Sister Nan. And may He continue to look over you, as well as may He continue to look over our patriarch, Bishop Edmund John, who suffers pains daily from his lower extremities. Now, this week, as I have been alerting you for the past 3 programs, sees the celebration of Universal Children's Day. The actual day would be the 20th, but the proceedings have started from today. And my few comments on this program this evening is by way of celebrating Universal Children's Day. The theme, Stop the Violence Against Children. Now, let me say this. Here in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have the most up-to-date laws concerning children that you will find anywhere in the Commonwealth Caribbean. I keep saying from time to time on this program that much of what we lament about in society is not due to the absence of appropriate laws. Much of it is due to our failure collectively to implement those laws which we have on the law books. So that where children are concerned, you would hardly find any situation in which a child is suffering that there is not some law that addresses that suffering, which, if put into effect, would bring to justice those causing the suffering to the children, or in some cases could even prevent unwanted suffering for children. We have the most recently passed Status of Children Act, passed in 2011, brought into force last year, 2015, which equalizes the status of children born in or out of wedlock. We have our family court, which daily administers laws regarding family situations with particular reference to children. So in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we have all the laws we need to deal with abuses of children, cruelty to children. We have laws governing the occupancy of children, that is labor laws, which protect children. And in many branches of family law, there is a fundamental principle that the welfare of the child is the paramount consideration. I would only hope that we in the society would put into place and maintain the necessary mechanisms, the reporting mechanisms, the prosecuting mechanisms, to put these laws into effect. And as we celebrate this week and highlight the status of children, let us hope that the society would become much more sensitive to the special concerns of children, much more responsive to the needs of children. Let us hope and pray that we would treat our children better and at a minimum without violence. That was by way of preliminary remark. I'm not on the main program as yet. Excuse me, let me moisten my throat. Today happened to have been World Diabetes Day. And as one who has been diagnosed with diabetes a couple of years now, I reach out to all those who are afflicted, and to those who are not afflicted, let me urge you to pay attention to your diet and to your lifestyle. To the National Diabetics and Hypertensive Association, let me wish you all the best in your endeavors. Okay, well, one final preliminary topic: the US elections. I was among those who was totally shell-shocked by the results. But looking back, I really should not have been, because from the moment that Mr. Trump announced his intention to seek the nomination of the Republican Party for the US presidency, I said to a dear friend of mine, Brother Vincent Ryan, who lives in New York, but lives in a house close to my house at Queens Drive, whenever he comes to St. Vincent. I said, Vincent, something tells me that this gentleman could win the presidency. And Vincent is a strong Clinton man. No way. PR? No way. Trump? And he gave me a lot of reasons why Trump could not win. That was last year. I said, Vincent, don't take your eyes off that fellow. And as the election campaigning went on, the more it appeared to me that Mr. Trump is a bit of a political genius, because the number of things that he said which would have knocked other candidates totally out of contention appeared to increase Mr. Trump's popularity. So that when the election came near and the polls were showing that Mrs. Clinton was so many points ahead here and there and so on, I too was taken in by all of that. So I really thought that Mrs. Clinton was going to win the election by a landslide, in spite of my political instinct, which had kept telling me that Mr. Trump could win. And lo and behold, Mr. Trump not only won, he won massively. That is the Electoral College, but the American political system is peculiar, because Mrs. Clinton actually got more popular votes than Mr. Trump. But in America, you don't elect a president by the number of votes cast individually. You elect him by the number of electoral college places which he manages to get. Roughly, an electoral college represents a congressional district. So there in America, we have the nation half in shock, many of them protesting night after night in various cities. But I protest. What are you going to protest about? The man has won the elections. So while people have the freedom to protest, I feel like they're wasting time. Let us pray that Mr. Trump would turn out to be an effective president. As of now, nobody can really predict what Mr. Trump will do or say from day to day. The man is a genius when it comes to political stratagem. So for the sake of the United States citizens and for the sake of mankind, let us hope Mr. Trump will make the right decisions, because if he doesn't, we all stand to be disadvantaged. I say no more, but we just have to watch and pray. Okay, well, the preliminaries are finished, believe it or not, and I'm sure you'd be relieved. We now go on to the topic, no such thing as a free divorce. Quite recently, someone asked me about that very matter. Person said, Mr. Campbell, is it true that you could get a free divorce? So I told the person, no, I have heard the phrase used from time to time, but it isn't what people think or what they say. So I will, in the short time available, I will let you know that there is no such thing as a free divorce. The person went on to say that she heard there is a procedure by which the Attorney General could sign some papers and grant you a divorce. That is not so at all, at all, at all. The only how you can get a free divorce is if you go to a lawyer and the lawyer decides not to charge you anything for doing the divorce for you. Not even the stamps you have to put on the various documents. So if a lawyer is particularly minded not to charge you for going through the procedures, fair enough, power to you. But it is not even free in the sense that Money still has to be spent to buy a lot of stamps to go on the various documents. So the phrase free divorce should be taken out of your vocabulary, out of your mentality totally. A divorce is an expensive legal process. You can only get a divorce by going through the High Court. In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we don't have Sharia law, which I understand allows a man to say to a woman, I divorce you, I divorce you, I divorce you 3 times, and that is it. Not in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Divorces have to follow the Matrimonial Causes Act. Can only be done through the High Court. You have to be married for 3 years before you could even petition the court for divorce, unless there are special circumstances that the law calls exceptional hardship or exceptional depravity. Short of those, or one of those conditions, you have to wait 3 years before you could even file a petition for divorce. And when you file, you have to allege one of 5 grounds for divorce in St. Vincent and Grenadines. Either that you have been separated for 5 years from the person, or you have been separated from the person for 2 years and the person consents to the granting of the divorce, or the other person has committed adultery and you find it intolerable to live with that other person, or the other person has deserted you for a continuous period of 2 years, or fifthly, that the other person has behaved in such a way that you, the intended petitioner, cannot reasonably be expected to live with the respondent. In other words, one spouse has to allege at least one of those grounds. You can allege more if the circumstances so warrant. But the person who is filing the petition, the petitioner, has to allege one of those 5 grounds. And if you can prove one of those 5 grounds in court, then the court will be minded to pronounce a decree nisi. A divorce is in 2 parts. You get the first decree nisi if the judge finds that you have proved that the marriage has broken down irretrievably, or I should have said really, there is one ground that is irretrievable breakdown, but that ground is provable by one of 5 facts. We loosely call them the 5 grounds, but the main ground, in fact the sole ground for divorce, is that the marriage has broken down irretrievably. That is, can't be put back together again, no hope for the marriage. Now, the person against whom the petition is filed is called the respondent. If there are children of the family who are under the age of 18, then the law takes a special interest in their welfare. Come back to the position of children. Your decree nisi, that is the first decree, would ordinarily be made absolute in 6 weeks' time, or the judge can shorten the process. But the law says that unless arrangements are made for the children which are satisfactory to the court, you cannot get your decree absolute. That is, you cannot get the decree made final. Now, let me say a word about that, because I've come across situations where people went through the divorce procedure, got the decree nisi, N-I-S-I, that means the first decree, never got the decree absolute, that is, they never went and had the registrar sign the decree absolute and then thought that they were divorced. In fact, in one case, somebody in that situation was about to get married again. Fortunately, it was discovered that their decree absolute was never registered, never signed by the registrar. So there had to be a scrambling to get the decree absolute signed so that the person could then be officially divorced. You're not officially divorced until that second piece of paper is signed by the registrar of the High Court. So if you went through a process of divorce and you got the first document, make sure you have the second one, because it's the second one that really signifies the marriage is at an end, has been brought to an end by process of law. Now, the Bar Association, since around 2000, 2001, has a tariff, a scale of fees, which lawyers are supposed to charge for a divorce. For the divorce itself, that is the legal procedure of going to the court and getting the petition heard, the tariff was set at $2,500. For those barristers who are on the VAT list, who pay VAT, then you add 15% to that to be collected by the barrister and handed over to the government. That's just for the first part. When you go on to the ancillary matters, that is children and property, that's different. Fees are charged according to how many children are involved, what worth of property is involved, how much of a fight there is for property, and so on. Those fees are at large. But the first part of it, for the simplest divorce, when no children are involved, no property, no maintenance of husband and wife, $2,500 is the Bar Association tariff. Now, as I said before, a lawyer could, for special reasons, decide, look, I'm not going to charge you, I'm doing it for you for nothing. So, in that way, you could say you're getting the divorce free. The lawyer might say, look, bring in $120 to buy stamps and so on. But there is no procedure by which anybody can sign papers and divorce you. And it costs you nothing. No way. So this thing about free divorce, get it out of your mind, get it out of your head, get it out of your vocabulary. And people find out that it is much more expensive to get a divorce than to get married. So that people who are married should really think twice before they decide to go through with a divorce procedure, because I tell you, it is not just expensive in monetary terms, it is time consuming. Above all, it is enormously stressful. Quite personally, I have found that no area of my practice is as stressful as in the handling of divorce cases, because there you deal with people's raw emotions. And the same two people who a few years ago stood before a marriage officer and witnesses and proclaimed their undying love and promised to live together till death do us part, when it comes to the breakdown of the marriage and people end up in divorce court, the naked hatred, the bitterness, the animosity, which those same two formerly loving people exhibit. Sometimes it is shameful, the way that people behave when they're going through the process of divorce. Sometimes they have children, young children, who suffer emotionally, psychologically, by the breakdown of the marriage between their parents. And the children don't understand what's going on. They want to know how come mommy and daddy are no longer married and they have to be going here and there. And it is painful for children, but you think you could get some big people to understand that and to decide to agree on matters of custody, maintenance, the division of property and so on? Now, some sensible couples, I must say, some, but a minority in my own experience, would sit down and say, look, our marriage is not working, it has not worked, it will never work, so let us go apart. And they will civilly agree that, okay, let us make this or that arrangement, and they would sign an agreement and everything would go smoothly. They share custody of the children. The one would have the children in the household, the other one would have visitation rights and so on. So they make it less painful for the children and for themselves. But those are the minority. The majority of people, when they get divorced, they just turn beasts. And they become just like raging animals, clawing at one another, figuratively, sometimes literally too. So that for people who are going through marital problems, I would plead with you, try and work things out. Try and get counseling, because every marriage has its rocky moments. You show me two people who tell you, oh, they have been married for over 20 years and they never once had a quarrel. I will show you two saints. You don't find many of those. Marriage has its ups and downs. But we all have to be civil. We have to be mature. We have to be adult about marital problems. But if at the end of the day things simply cannot work out and you all live in hatred of one another, can't stand one another, well then it's probably better not to have a poisonous atmosphere in the home. Probably better that you all go your separate ways. But if you do that, at least think about what you're doing and see to what extent you can agree on how to divide property you have in common, what level of maintenance to agree upon for the children and so on. It's far better to agree. And if you agree on these things, then the fees you have to pay will be much smaller. But when lawyers have to fight and hassle, then you pay for that in higher legal fees. So, divorce is always expensive. No such thing as a free divorce. And I told you all of the incident a couple of years ago. I told you about a client who came to see me to get advice about divorce. And when I had finished explaining what are the grounds for divorce, and much the same thing that which I have just said to you on this program, I then asked the lady, how long have you been married? She said, Mr. Campbell, I ain't married yet, but I just want to know. So I told you that, gave you that joke before. She isn't married yet, but she wants to know what is going to be involved with a divorce. So I had to laugh, but I hope she didn't take it as an offense. But at least she was sensitive enough to be looking forward. Probably she has a suspicion about the nature of the temperament of the person to whom she was going to get married. But there you have it. Marriage is a special estate, according to the good book, and it should not be entered into lightly, but advisedly, and all the other things which you are charged when you get married. So, no such thing as a free divorce. Stay married. That is all from me from this program, number 845 of The Law and You. I look forward to being of further service to you next week, Monday, DV, for another presentation in this public service nation-building series, The Law and You. Do have a very pleasant week, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, boys and girls, and may the good Lord continue to bless us all, and may the Lord especially bless the United States of America under their new president.
The Law and You, a look at laws in St. Vincent and the Grenadines which affect our daily lives. The Law and You, presented by lawyer panel P.R Campbell QC, and brought to you on SVG-TV as a public service.